Previously on One Piece, first impressions. So this is Wano. Oops. Odin is so frickin' cool. Also, we're time travelers. What the hell is going on? Take this! Ouch. Act 2 is even better than Act 1. Wano is already proving to be a sprawling epic, and it's clear a lot of passion went into crafting this story. I had some critiques of Act 1, and while I still see some weak spots in Act 2, I think it's an impressive display from an author confident in his narrative. Today I'm going to be covering all of Act 2, so that's everything from Luffy going to prison, up through Zoro getting an insane sword from hell. If you're just joining us for the first time, I'm Denny, and this is my series where I go through the One Piece anime as a first-time viewer and give my first impressions. If you're curious about my thoughts on Act 1 of Wano, there should be a link in the description. We begin this act with some truly horrifying details. The dead live! No, not zombies. Moria. He's back. Damn it. So just like the beginning of Act 1, we are taken across the Grand Line to check in on a couple of key characters, but also to get some vague updates on developments from the Reverie. First up, we go to Mihawk's delightfully gothic castle and see him reading some concerning news. We don't find out what it is, but I'm guessing something related to the warlord system has finally unfolded. However, the big story here is Gecko Moria's return from the dead. Krona sees news of Moria's activity in the paper, discovering that I guess Doflamingo somehow didn't kill him, and so she wants to rush over to her master. Honestly, it was good seeing this duo again. But we're not with them for long. Moria takes center stage in this side story, and I wasn't really excited at all about his return, but he does give us an interesting look at Blackbeard and his paradise for pirates. Moria is trying to find Absalom, of all people, who turns out to have been killed for his devil fruit. Thank Anaru. Now, an actually interesting, if a bit undercooked villain, Shiryu of the Rain, has it, which just makes him even more badass. Moria is surrounded by Shiryu and Devon, who ate the Nine Tails mythical devil fruit. Between her, Marco, and Orochi, that's 3 mythical devil fruit users present in this arc. Considering how rare that type appears to be, I wonder if this is setting anything up. Anyway, Blackbeard tries to get Moria to join him, and I actually think that could be kind of interesting. It's left ambiguous if he does, but given the fact that it's either that or die, I have a feeling Moria's sticking around. But then we get one quick glance, one fat tease at what has been going on at Mary Joa. Sabo and the other captains of the Revolutionary Army have been fighting the Admirals. Something tells me that means the revolution is screwed because, I doubt the world government's big guns are being taken down off screen. So with that craziness in the back of our minds, let's zoom over to Wano. Act 2 proper begins interestingly. I figured it would be an immediate follow-up with everyone panicking that Luffy got captured, but instead, some time has passed, and I thought that was the smart move. It isn't important that the audience see the decision for everyone to keep going with the plan, plus, taking some time to show everyone in their new positions is more engaging. The first group we see makes up the most disappointing subplot of the act. Dogstorm and Kinemon's crews challenge Ashura, who won't join them, essentially out of a feeling of betrayal. This could have been interesting, but as I'll discuss later, I felt it was a letdown. Meanwhile, Chopper's taking care of Otama back at her home, Luffy isn't getting along with Kid in prison, Nami is paired up with Shinobu, Sanji's in the Flower Capital with everyone else, and the townsfolk are getting pumped up for rebellion. We even see what Thick Boy Jack has been up to. He goes to Onigashima to offer his tribute to Kaido from the Curry Land, but King and Queen don't feel it's significant enough, and then call Jack the Stooge. So mean. And it seems like it bothers him. What the hell? Why do I feel bad for Jack now? Come on, he's tough. So let's talk about Luffy in the prison. Act 1 left off with a cliffhanger that he and Eustace Kid will be dealing with each other in the labor camp. Both are very competitive, trying to do the most labor to earn the most dumplings, and I love this dynamic. Kid really brings out Luffy's headstrong competitive side, and vice versa. I'm glad the relationship isn't anything like Luffy and Law's. They have more of a personality conflict, which works with Law as a character, but seeing Kid and Luffy butt heads like this is much more the rivalry relationship I was expecting from these three back in Saobody. I enjoyed this Luffy and Kid in prison side story quite a bit. I thought it was a good mix-up for Luffy. Keep him on the back burner for a while in a unique setting surrounded by interesting characters. And whoa, don't you go thinking you slipped the Mudman past me. I love how he's just blatantly shown a couple of times in group shots of the prisoners, like I'm not gonna remember this creep. I was expecting to see him again based on what he knows, but definitely did not expect him in Wano. He eventually makes his presence known, and we get a brief glimpse of how he ended up here, which leaves me with a lot more questions. After Fishman Island, he seems to have turned things around and was living his best life until ex-Drake got his ass and threw him in prison. We still don't know why. And by this point, we know how Oda loves to bring back seemingly unimportant loose threads in big ways, so I'm expecting some explanatory reveal down the line. Either way, Caribou claims he's a changed man, which remains to be seen, and wants to be part of Luffy's jailbreak that everyone sees coming a mile away. Before we get to that, let's check in on the rest of the nation. Zoro's cross-country trek has paired him up with a big-headed weirdo. Since Zoro seemingly has no care in the world, he's just taking in the sights and dropping in on gambling dens to win money and kick ass. I thought this wandering Ronin thing was really fun for him. Meanwhile, the Minks are stealing supplies from Kaido's men. Carrot is a big help in this espionage, and I enjoyed seeing her paired up with Wanda again. Those two have a nice dynamic. Of course, this is all part of Kinnemon's plan to frame Ashura for these crimes, to bring him into conflict with the Beast Pirates. Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna go exactly how you want it to. Kinnemon's never been a genius, but this is so stupid. Dogstorm going along with this without a word of dissent is also so odd. Back in the Flower Capital, things are a bit more lively. There's a new soba shop in town, and the ladies are lining up. Sanji has disrupted the natural balance of commerce and gets visited by some Yakuza thugs, and this just ends in an ass-kicking. It's so funny to me how Frankie gets excited and just decides to join in. Gives us an excuse to see this great fighting duo. So rare, but always so good, no matter how brief their fights continue to get. But the real standout is our first look at Shogun Orochi, who we see directly making deals with CP0 since they no longer have Dofi to act as a middleman. Orochi is clearly high on his own supply, openly challenging the world government, knowing that he has the backing of Kaido. In exchange for some more weapons, he wants Vegapunk. Don't we all? This scientist is becoming more prominent as the story goes on, and now that a core villain directly wants to control him, that means we can't be too far from seeing him. But under what circumstances? There's 100% zero chance the world government parts with their in-house disruptor of reality. Although it was technically 2 arcs ago, Act 2 of Wano makes it clear that the threads established in Whole Cake Island are going to be picked up right away. Kid clears up a rumor that he lost his arm to Big Mom, instead revealing he lost it during a battle with the red-haired pirates, who he has an unexplained grudge against. So like, is Kid Shanks's kid? They both are the only red-haired boys around, and they both have lost an arm. There's gotta be some reason for the beef, but I'm just hoping it isn't that Shanks was a deadbeat dad. Meanwhile, we see that Big Mom is here. The entire Charlotte family has arrived off the shores of Wano, with the notable exception of Katakuri. King, who is a pterodactyl man, utterly ruins their climb up the waterfall, sending their ship back down, while Big Mom gets the same whirlpool treatment as Luffy. So I'm sure this weird massage-giving squid will save her. Of course, there's also the Germa element. Law comes to the Flower Capital to warn Sanji 2 of the Tobi Roppo are coming to investigate the mysterious Soba Cook. Unable to run away from the shakedown page 1 is giving innocence, Sanji busts out the raid suit, which I was not expecting so soon. He's been so adamant about distancing himself from Germa, I thought this would be a moment saved for the final battle. I love how the suit Soba mask. The outfit's way different than any of the other siblings, but I wonder why his theme is black and not yellow. The big benefit of the suit is that Sanji can finally turn invisible like he always dreamed. I wonder if Reiju is the one who knew to incorporate that feature. That's 2 references to the Clear fruit in Act 2, which is interesting, but on a grander scale, this act has been filled with references to Thriller Bark. Strange. The Reverie was clearly an echo of post-Enies Lobby. So is Wano, or at least Act 2 of Wano, supposed to be an echo of Thriller Bark? Either way, this is a massive power boost that Sanji uses to decimate Page 1, and it's a power he will only use responsibly. Going on in the background of the Flower Capital has been the procession of the most beautiful woman in Wano, Komurasaki. Our first impression of her is through the eyes of these old men who she scammed, which makes it seem like she's a manipulative asshole. She gets these men, who are terrible in their own right, to give her all their money. Then, once they're completely destitute, she's done with them, tells them that men are like dogs who just bring her money, and outright says she doesn't like poor people. This is barely relevant to the plot at all, but the story forces this to be our first impression of this woman, so I think it's important to keep in mind. Also, the implication pretty much from the beginning is that she's Momo's sister who didn't travel through time. The hair color is a pretty big indicator, but also, how many other random 20-something-year-old women have we been introduced to? A good portion of characters converge at Orochi's banquet. Robin and Karamasaki are working it, Nami and Shinobu are creeping around, doing pretty much nothing at all, and Brook is haunting the halls. The banquet pretty much solidifies Orochi's personality as this massive baby who has to have his needs met at all times, or he'll throw a tantrum, but also that his men have zero respect for him and his cowardice. Between Orochi and Kaido, this really seems to be a country with no respect for its rulers. The whispered insults about him leads Toko, Kuramasaki's attendant and a girl who can't stop smiling, to start laughing. Naturally, all hell breaks loose. The Straw Hats are all here to gather some intel, and funnily enough, Brook discovers another poneglyph and some dolls. Neither of which we see on screen, so what the hell? Dolls, huh? Maybe like voodoo dolls? Probably not, but these guys have gotta mean something. All the sneaking around is ruined by Orochi going Hydra mode and attempting to kill Toko, who is saved by Kuramasaki, who in turn is then killed by Kiyoshiro. He is an interesting secondary character throughout this arc. We're first introduced to him talking shit about Orochi, and it's very obvious he's the one who fakes Kuramasaki's death, but he also shows some loyalty to Orochi. I'm thinking he's biding his time, waiting for an opportunity to betray his lord. He's one to keep an eye on. Anyway, the Straw Hats save the little girl, are pursued by ninja, but manage to escape. Complete side note, but Shinobu's powers had me thinking. I just watched Film Z for the first time, which features a de-aging power, which got me thinking about the ripe fruit, and if it can be used on people. Throughout this act, we see Momo constantly bemoaning his age and lack of strength. He is also 20 years time displaced. Could Shinobu use her powers during the final battle to age Momo up and get that dragon v dragon fight that needs to go down? This mature woman might be more important than I initially thought. Kid escaped. That's right. In a clever turn of events, Kid hightailed it out of prison off screen, leaving Luffy to deal with the aftermath. I appreciated this. The obvious move would have been to team up these two powerhouses, but given their personality conflict, this felt like the more organic progression. How is Luffy going to escape? Welp, the kids have a plan for that. Big Mom, of course. The beached mama is discovered by Chopper, Momo, Tama, and Kiku, and she doesn't remember who she is. Jesus Christ. That's a big old double twist. I had no idea what was gonna happen. If they would try to make her an ally against Kaido, or somehow just get rid of her. Either way, the idea of Big Mom in a nation with a limited food supply was a ticking time bomb waiting to go off that was stressing me out. But don't worry, the kids plan to use her tremendous strength to travel to the prison and break Luffy out by lying to her about some food. Always a smart plan. The fact that this insanely dangerous old bag is just riding next to Momo was also a huge stressor, and honestly, it was so irresponsible of Kiku to not heed Chopper's warning at all. She barely has any opinion on the matter, which is either just lazy writing or shows that she should not be in charge of these children. I do love, though, how literally none of the Alliance have any plans to break Luffy out until now. Everyone knows exactly where he is, but they just expect him to figure it out for himself. Fair enough, since it doesn't take him long to just start climbing out. After the kid escape, Luffy is harassed by an alpaca guard, who is so disgusting, it made me want to seal his mouth shut with a welding iron. I loved him. All of the Smile Fruit creeps have such fun designs. They're these weird, deformed, bastardized animal-human hybrids. That hippo man was hilarious. The Warden is very similar to Hold'em, and the Scorpion and Armadillo dudes we see later are fun. It's a nice touch to visually show the differences between the effects of a natural versus artificial devil fruit that let Oda go a bit wild with some designs that could otherwise get repetitive. The crux of Luffy's conflict now is due to his relationship with the old man he's been helping, who turns out to be the former leader of the Yakuza in the Flower Capital, Hyogoro. After really being hyped up by some other characters around the country, he's obviously going to be extremely important for this entire arc. Luffy has taken to helping the old dude so he can earn some more precious dumplings and, you know, not die. This pisses the guards off, and the whole time I was wondering why Luffy just didn't use Haki to burst out of this prison. But I guess, see, Prism Stone nullifies Haki as well? Pretty convenient. It makes sense why it can cancel out Devil Fruit powers, but it's never explained why it can cancel out Haki, which, in my opinion, it shouldn't be able to, since that's essentially spiritual energy that has nothing to do with the sea, but whatever. Around this time is when KWEEN arrives, and I've gotta say, between his design and this prison wasteland, I was getting some serious Mad Max vibes. KWEEN then busts a move on stage and proves that he's a funky fresh superstar. This is when Luffy begins climbing out with Hyo because he hates music. What an asshole! Stop him! The escape doesn't go well, and as punishment, Luffy gets essentially a prolonged execution in the Sumo Inferno. Sumo? No. No! Oh wait, this is just a battle royale in a ring. Don't scare me like that. If Luffy or Hyo gets knocked out, they'll have their pretty little heads severed, but who cares? It's training time. I really enjoy how Luffy takes advantage of this time to develop his Haki technique. He wants to be able to perform essentially a Haki emission attack that he saw Rayleigh do, which he thinks will help him defeat Kaido. That's a nice touch and makes this whole prison subplot feel valuable for Luffy as a character, and not just a place to meet new people. It's around this point that I started to feel that Wano is already the most ambitious story in One Piece yet. I mean, just the fact that it's broken out into arcs shows it's going to be long and considered, but it's also sprawling, taking place over so much time and space, while balancing all these characters and subplots that are building to this unified point. I could see some people thinking this act was tedious or could have been sped up a bit, but for now at least, I've really come to appreciate the intricacies of the story and the overlapping of clearly important characters in this slow build to another climax. What I'm obviously talking about is Sanji using his invisibility powers to spy on some mature bodies in the bathhouse. When Nami, Robin, and Shinobu are taking a quick break to cleanse themselves, Hawkins and Drake show up, revealing they are well aware of the crescent moon ankle tattoos and the rebellion. Ruh-roh! Luckily, the great Soba Mask is here and nearly loses all the blood in his body when he sees Nami go full frontal. What a hero! Turns out both Drake and Hawkins are from the North Blue, so they easily recognize Stealth Black. Drake seems to be just as infatuated as Law was, but they're unable to prevent Sanji from getting the ladies out of there. Also, in a strange act of exposition, Sanji tells us that off-screen, he heard that Beppo and the other Law pirates had been captured to lure out Law. They're pretty much useless, huh? I want the Heart Pirates to be dynamic characters that interact with the main cast in meaningful ways. Considering how relevant Law has been to the story so far, you'd think they'd be somewhat important, but this is the most significant action they've been involved with, and it's a net negative. Fingers crossed they eventually get to do something cool. Meanwhile, Zoro has been having quite the journey. Big Head took him to his home, Ibesu Town, with the weird smiling people where I'm guessing Kuromasaki also laid low as a child due to her relationship with Toko. When the other Straw Hats arrive here, Zoro is already gone because Zushui got stolen off screen. Between this and the Beppo news, there was a lot that Oda just didn't feel like showing all of a sudden. Regardless, Zoro confronts the monk who took it on a bridge, and I've just gotta say that nearly every setting Zoro travels to throughout this act is so damn cool. Anyway, the monk explains the importance of Zushui to the country, and that he took it back to its rightful place. Zoro says he gets it, but also doesn't care. Fuck yeah, baby. That's the pirate life. This fight is interrupted by an insane scythe dude chasing after none other than Blue Hooker and the Joker, and Zoro just can't let some innocents be slaughtered. Now, this is a really awesome fight. Seeing Zoro balance two different opponents like this was badass, but dude, when Zoro goes all out on the assassin was probably the best Zoro fight put to screen. The animation was incredible. Just for a random one-off battle, I was beyond impressed. Zoro wipes the floor with the assassin, and the monk disappears, leaving a wounded Zoro to be cared for by, come on, say it with me, Momo's sister. Hiyori's identity was revealed far sooner than I anticipated. I guess it was a pretty obvious reveal that Oda couldn't just milk forever, but Zoro, of all people, getting involved with her was not what I expected. Meanwhile, we see that the nasty old men that Kuromasaki scammed are now forced to live in Ibesu Town. It's interesting that these characters aren't going away, which means their quest for revenge will probably end up biting her in the ass. In an abandoned home, Hiyori treats Zoro's wounds and falls asleep against his chest.
Now this is an interesting development.
Gotta say, this Zoro and Hiyori plotline keeps surprising me. One Piece doesn't do romance, so I'm sure nothing will come from it, but as far as romance does go in One Piece, Zoro got the babe. Something had to break in this act to give it dramatic weight and shake up the status quo. Though, once again, I was caught off guard. Big Head is the guy at the center of it all. Turns out Zoro's random traveling companion was actually a massive deal. Not only is he Toko's dad, which completely made sense, but he also used to be a daimyo and close friends with Odin. When he finds out about the rebellion, he frames himself as the local Robin Hood figure and lets himself get caught in order to redirect the current raid plan by editing the flyer, but also to discredit the rumor of rebellion by claiming it was a prank. Essentially, his last fuck you to Orochi. Yasuo's public execution is the nexus where all other subplots can join in this act. Even Luffy, all the way out in prison, watches everything go down. And I felt it was a valuable scene where the grievances of the country could be personified and expressed. Of course, we don't find out just how far Orochi's destruction of Wano society and morale has gone until the people of Ibesu begin laughing at the death of their beloved friend. Hiyori explains that they can only express one emotion because they ate smile fruits. What? I always thought that was a strange name for an artificial devil fruit, and I theorized SAD was perhaps some collection of negative emotions that went into crafting the fruits, and in Caesar Clown's mind, Smile was the appropriate name for his successful product. However, turns out smiles have a much darker reason for their name. Only 1 in 10 smile fruits actually give someone powers. The other 9 times, the eater has their face distorted into a permanent grin. Orochi, as the massive fucking dickhead he is, decided to throw the starving people of his country the discarded scraps of failed smile fruits, which left a good portion of his population mutilated and unable to express any emotion other than joy. Hiyori describes this act as Orochi's greatest sin, and it's hard to disagree. We've all ruled over nations with iron fists before, but this depravity, forging false joy on downtrodden people, is just despicable. The story does an excellent job of making Orochi a hateable monster. Then, of course, we get this deeply upsetting scene of Yasuo's Jokerized daughter running to her father's corpse. Orochi, unable to get enough of being a massive piece of shit, spots Toko and decides to shoot her. But she's rescued by a duo whose reunion has been long overdue. Zoro and Sanji, fuck yes. This was such a cathartic moment. In the heat of the action, before the entire nation, they've defied the Shogun side by side, and they look so displeased to see each other after all this time. Let's go! I love how Zoro instantly goes to kill Orochi. Sanji tells him to stop, but like, fuck that. He's right there, dude. Of course he's stopped by Kiyoshiro, and in the chaos Orochi escapes, but def worth a shot. The Strats get into the action, and we haven't seen this mix of characters together in far too long. It felt so good to see. Luffy cheering them on from prison is identical to how I felt. This is really the turning point of the act. Law uses the chaos to go after his crew, but he's intercepted by Hawkins since they've been really paired up as rivals. He converted the Heart Pirates into his life support straw dolls, so Law can't do anything to him without hurting or killing the people he's there to save. What a brilliant use of that power that I didn't even think of. Sorry, Law, but you goofed it, pal. But let's be honest. The best sequence of this conflict, and the one that had me dying laughing, was Sanji versus Drake. When Sanji hears Hiyori screaming out, he fucking flames Drake much easier than I expected and rushes toward her, only to be beat out at the last second by Zoro, who then carries her away to Sanji's complete surprise. See what I mean? Zoro's getting the lady this time around, and honestly, it's a super refreshing concept to see Sanji be jealous of Zoro in this way. He even mumbles to himself that his bounty is finally higher than Zoro's, which hammers home that this guy has a serious inferiority complex. Way too desperate, my dude. Everyone gets out of there, except for Law, but that's really the bulk of the action for all these characters for the rest of the act. Our attention largely shifts back to the prison from here on out. Luffy is still dealing with his battle royale training, and there are some interesting updates. Raizo actually broke out Caribou by mistake, and he wants to help Luffy in exchange for a ride out of Wano, so this muddy creep isn't going anywhere for a while. Meanwhile, Hyo's been brought into the loop on Kinemon's plan, and declares he's going to rally the prisoners, as well as his former Yakuza allies to the cause. To top that off, he's also going to teach Luffy that Haki emission technique, which he refers to as Ryuo, I think. A wrench gets thrown in Luffy's Sumo Inferno session when Eustace Kid returns as a prisoner, now alongside the assassin who tried to kill Hiyori. In a completely mind-blowing twist, turns out this is Killer. Yes, Kid's killer, who is a victim of the smile fruit. Kid doesn't understand why Killer is like this, and demands to know where the rest of his crew is, which ignites something in Luffy. I appreciated this moment. Luffy doesn't hate Kid, and seeing a captain separated from his crew is something he can relate to, so it makes sense he's eager to speed up his breakout. Also, Killer vs. Zoro was a fight I think everyone wanted to see when he was introduced, and it's so cool that it happened without us even realizing it. Way more one-sided than I expected, though. In regard to the smile mutilation, I don't think One Piece is the type of series that will allow innocent characters to remain deformed. That means the smile victims will have to be healed by the end, right? What kind of genius could do that? Vegapunk could be coming at the end of this arc. It was already set up with the Orochi and CP0 meeting, so I wonder if the world government will be heavily involved by the end. I'm of two minds. It'd be way cooler to see the Kazuki Alliance team up with the Marines to take down Kaido, but at the same time, it makes more sense for the world government to protect their trading partner in Orochi. Or I could just be completely wrong in this side tangent. Since Luffy has been pretty much unstoppable, Queen decides to mix things up. For every second Luffy is alive, Kid and Killer will be held underwater. So expect these boys to grow gills. This really infuriates Luffy, who once again demands to fight Queen himself, but then monstrous footsteps are heard from beyond the prison walls. Big Mom is here, starving for Queen's precious red bean soup. That's right, baby. It's Queen versus Queen. This was a fight that's been foreshadowed for some time now, but I've gotta say, I thought it would last more than 2 hits. Holy shit, does Big Mom unleash the ultimate smackdown. Of course, this chaos benefits the prisoners. Caribou actually has a useful plan with cutting off the smart snail, communication. Maybe he'll be more helpful than I thought. Also, Killer and Kid get out of the water sooner than I expected. They were only drowning for about a full episode. But the big turning point is when Big Mom confronts Luffy over eating all the red bean soup. Olin, as she's called now, is actually much kinder than Big Mom. Her infuriation with Luffy doesn't come from some hunger pang, but because she can't share the food with the people of Okibori Town who fed her even though they're poor. What an interesting turn for her. I wonder if this is going to play into her motivations as the story goes on. Either way, Big Mom is out to kill Luffy. Funny how things just work out. Luffy is actually able to use Ryu to get the collars off himself and Hyo, so the old man stands before Big Mom to continue Luffy's training so he doesn't forget that feeling. This just results in a race through the entire prison complex that destroys everything. I'm glad that we finally get this Ryu technique explained though. It's flowing your haki into something and blowing it up from the inside. Makes enough sense. I can see how Luffy would think this could be beneficial against Kaido, but I am still not convinced. Anyway, Queen bonks Big Mom's big nog, and she remembers who she is and all her glorious children. But Katakuri has noticeably been absent from both the ship earlier and also her memories. Strange. I really hope he didn't get some cruel punishment for being unable to stop Luffy. I mean, even fucking Flompy is there. When Big Mom goes down, Queen acts in the legitimately most rational way I've ever seen a character in this series behave. He immediately has her chained up 100 times since the Prism Stone, he has her pumped full of powerful tranquilizers, then he hauls ass toward a boat heading toward Kaido with as many guards as he can take. Wastes no time and takes every precaution. This man is a certified genius in this world. With Queen gone, the prison falls out of control. The Kozuki allies form up, and Hyo tells the Akazaya 9 to identify themselves to give the prisoners hope. This is when Frog Boy finally emerges from his cage, and we find out that Kiku is just a normal trans person. I thought there was gonna be some hormone type hijinks with the way this was built up, but I guess we know now, and it's just time to move past it. Kind of anticlimactic, but I do like her creepy demon mask. As inspirational as a frog and transsexual are, for some reason, the prisoners actually need some more convincing. So, Luffy does his classic shouting technique to get them all to see reason. He tells them he's here to defeat Kaido, and they need to choose if they want to keep living as slaves or fight with him. Also, I love how Luffy can just casually see the future now like it's no big deal. He instantly stops the warden from launching a plague bomb at the crowd, then he sicks the prisoners on the rest of the guards. Udon has officially been conquered. All in all, I thought this prison plotline for Luffy was actually a better use of his character and personality than how he was used in Act 1. I really enjoyed practically everything that went down here. As the act winds down, there are some notable shifts and alliances across the country that are worth taking a closer look at. Getting back to a critique I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Kinemon and Ashura reconnected during Yasuo's execution. Kinemon flat out tells Ashura that he's been framing him, and then begs for his forgiveness and help. This is by far the least gripping subplot. I couldn't care less about Kinemon's back and forth with this guy. I was just hoping that something worthwhile would come from it. It honestly just felt like the story couldn't think of anything for Kinemon, Dogstorm, or the Minx to do during this act, so they forced this conflict that isn't even really a conflict, because Ashura is just like, okay, I'll join you now. It felt so anticlimactic. There wasn't even a convincing argument made or anything. He just needed some time to come to his senses. And I mean, that's fine, but don't make that an entire subplot that takes up all of Kinemon's time. So far, he's really the only interesting member of the Akazaya 9, so this really felt like a waste. Back at the prison, Luffy has to knock some manly sense into Momo. This is becoming a reoccurring theme with these two, and I do like how Luffy has become this unlikely mentor to Momo. The Little Lord has an interesting arc, escaping from his father's massive shadow and overcoming his own cowardly instincts. He speaks to the prisoners and finally solidifies their loyalty to the cause. Meanwhile, Hyo has reunited with his 4 gang leaders who are going to rally even more troops. All Luffy wanted to do was train, but he ended up really providing a massive boost to the alliance. Back in the Flower Capital, there's a really interesting twist that may be the most significant development in the entire act, despite how ambiguous it was. Law traded himself for his crew. He also tells them not to tell Luffy or anyone else because he knows they'll likely come rushing in to save him and ruin everything else in the process. Law's back, baby! This is the kind of big brain, tough guy pirate shit I needed. He's just gonna take a beating and do his best to scheme some success out of it. In fact, we don't even have to wait long for this to pay off. Somehow, Law turned the tables on Hawkins and ends up torturing him for intel. Drake is there, but it seems to me the payoff setup in Dressrosa has already occurred. I'm guessing he's letting Law do as he likes because he feels he owes Law for what went down with Dofi. That remains to be confirmed, but I just love how flawlessly Law turned this situation to his advantage. We even learn why Hawkins' alliance with Kid and Scratchman fell apart. Scratchman was the mole the whole time. You can never trust a long limmer. So I guess it's only a matter of time until he enters the story. The most significant development that comes from this entire act, though, is the meeting of Big Mom and Kaido. Two emperors, one island. Queen did his job and got the old lady to Onigashima, where she asked King if he'd like to join her crew, since he's part of a race she doesn't have living on Whole Cake Island. She is a collector, after all. What kind of person is King? What's he hiding underneath all that gimp leather? I'm too scared to find out. It's also around this time that Napoleon, Big Mom's hat, and part of her soul finally wakes up. I've gotta say, this was atrocious writing. The entire time since Big Mom lost her memory, Napoleon appeared to be sleeping. Even Chopper noticed this and was wondering why. Turns out he didn't remind Big Mom of who she is or why she's here for days because he's shy. What a lame excuse. That's just Oda saying he didn't want to deal with that plot detail. It's particularly egregious when there was such a simple solution. Instead of having Chopper freak out at Big Mom every second of that plotline and do absolutely nothing else, he could have been discreetly trying to keep Napoleon from getting to Big Mom. Then, after Big Mom gets her memories, Napoleon manages to get to the prison and reunite with her. Boom, simple solution. Anyway, the two huge monsters decide to kill each other until they decide to ally themselves in order to conquer the world. Then they'll go back to killing each other. What? I guess this alliance was inevitable, since the story loves to throw everything it can at our protagonists, and things can't just go according to plan. But considering how we just got through an arc where half the Straw Hats had to flee for their lives from Big Mom's forces, this throws a massive wrench into the plan. I honestly don't see how they win the raid with the forces they currently have now. But that could always change. Cat Viper? Marco? I'd like to end this video by honoring just how dope Zoro has been throughout this entire act. The man has barely been involved with the larger story, but every single thing he does is badass as all hell. He really hasn't had this serious spotlight since, I don't know, maybe the end of Thriller Bark. His journey across the country with Hiyori was wonderful. Seeing him battle those ninjas in that forest was so cool. What's being done with Zoro is new for him, but it still fits right in with his character. Protecting Hiyori as a Ronin in this Japanese setting only amplifies his best qualities. After this, he returns to the bridge looking for the monk to get Zushui back, but once again, their battle is interrupted. This time, Kawamatsu arrives, looking for Hiyori, who he took care of before becoming a prisoner. It's here we get the story of Kawa gathering the swords with a fox, which was nice and a cool way for the Alliance to have access to this armory of weapons, but the fox just being the monk and then dipping was weird to me. It's outright magic in a way we've never seen before. Maybe it's a cultural thing, but it just felt off. Despite Zoro still not giving a fuck about Zushui's national significance, Hiyori talks him out of taking it back in exchange for one of Odin's swords, Enma. Oh, here we go, baby. It's that time again. New sword time. Yet another strange echo of Thriller Bark for Zoro. So I guess the long-nosed dude who lives with Tama was actually waiting to give Odin's swords to Momo and Hiyori. Case closed. Now he acts as a sort of instructor to Zoro on how to use Enma, because dear God, is it a beast. It's a badass blade, said to be able to slice the bottom of hell, and its pair is a more heavenly sword, which I think is an interesting dichotomy. Momo doesn't take his, but he's really being set up with some serious tools to enter this fight. We'll have to see some crazy shit from him. Anyway, we see that Enma sucks Zoro's arm into being a raisin since it drains Haki. Then, it does far more damage than was intended, which makes for quite the interesting problem for Zoro to have. I'm not sure if Enma's technically a cursed blade, but it definitely has a negative impact on the user that they have to overcome. I always like the concept of having to tame a weapon. It's a great narrative device for Zoro, but I feel it hasn't really been used to its fullest potential, so I'm hoping that with this sword, we actually see some serious consequences for attempting to tame it. But Zoro might just have an edge, because his Wano Ichimonji and Enma were crafted by the same man. That's a wild reveal that has to have some significance, but I also like how it retcons Zoro's main sword to being a badass blade itself. It's a nice touch. Overall, Act 2 of Wano has been my favorite so far. The intricacies of the multiple subplots that Oda is balancing take shape in a way that is just damn impressive. Not everything was a home run, but I think there were far more hits than misses. That leaves us with a raid on the horizon, and I've gotta be honest, I don't really understand that plan at all. Why wait to attack some place where every single one of your enemies will be, especially when you're drastically outgunned? Maybe it'll make sense when it all comes together, but I doubt the plan will even work. They also have to deal with Big Mom's forces, and I'm sure no one even thought it was important enough to tell Kinemon that Big Mom is even around. But we'll see. Thank you for watching. My next video on Wano Act 3 will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, I've got some other goodies on the channel, like some One Piece movie reviews and my latest series covering Jujutsu Kaisen. Special thanks to my patrons who got early access to this video and all other videos I publish on the channel. They're the kind of cool folk who don't turn around when something's blown up behind them, no matter what it is. I hope to see you in my next video, but until then, I'll shut up.